From Toronto, Canada, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett.
Thanks for inviting me into your home, long-haul truck, RV, camper, taxi, your parents' basement, your loft, that greasy spoon just off the interstate, and your cabin in the woods. Hello to all of you checking us out on one of our fine affiliate stations across North America. The Conspiracy Show app, of course, a free download, the YouTube channel. And please take a moment and hit the red sub button if you haven't already done so on the YouTube channel, The Conspiracy Show. However and wherever you're listening, I bid thee the warmest of welcomes, and I thank you for your fine company. If you like The Conspiracy Show, check out my podcast, Conspiracy Unlimited. It drops 3 days a week, new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Conspiracy Unlimited, and just go to Conspiracy Unlimited Podcast to listen and subscribe. And don't forget my other podcast, The Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. If you love rock and roll and you love mysteries, the paranormal, true crime, unsolved murder, strange synchronicities involving some of your favorite rock icons, I think you're going to really enjoy The Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. And it's available at Apple Podcasts and Google Play. New episodes drop Wednesdays at midnight, 12 a.m. Eastern, The Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. Enjoy. On March the 13th, 1997, something extraordinary happened in the skies over Phoenix and across Arizona, parts of Nevada, on that clear parade of low-flying, mile-wide, V-shaped formations. Orbs and craft glided silently overhead, attracting the attention of at least 10,000 people. The U.S. Air Force identified the lights as flares dropped by A-10 Warthog aircraft performing training exercises at the Barry Goldwater Range in southwest Arizona. Hollywood actor Kurt Russell, the Escape from L.A. star, was traveling in a private plane into Phoenix, and he spotted the phenomenon and quickly reported it to the control tower at the airport. Fife Symington, then governor of Arizona, initially mocked the whole incident. You'll remember he called a press conference to discuss the event and then brought out somebody in a cheesy alien costume. But years later, he admitted he actually witnessed the event, stated he believes it was of extraterrestrial origin, and said the military's official explanation that it was caused by flares is total bunk. So, what have we learned about the Phoenix Lights 21 years later? Dr. Lynne Kitei is an internationally acclaimed physician and health educator for over 40 years who pushed aside her accomplished medical career to pursue answers for the silent mile-wide V, delta, and boomerang-shaped objects that were witnessed by over 10,000 people. And she photographed up close and personal prior to, during, and after what is now hailed as the most witnessed, most documented, and most important mass anomalous sightings in modern history. Dr. Lynne was leading the cutting-edge era of early disease detection and prevention as chief clinical consultant at the Imaging Prevention Wellness Center at the world-renowned Arizona Heart Institute in Phoenix, Arizona, until coming forward in 2004 after 7 years of anonymity and intense research as a key witness to the still unexplained mass UFO events throughout Arizona called the Phoenix Lights. Besides appearing on hundreds of national and international TV and radio programs, including Coast to Coast AM, the History, Science, Travel, Discovery, and National Geographic channels, Dr. Lynne has recently released the 20th anniversary editions of her best-selling Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, and the internationally award-winning Phoenix Lights Beyond Top Secret documentary, and the groundbreaking Phoenix Lights UFO and Crop Circle graphic novel activities coloring book, all available at Amazon.com. Dr. Lynne Kitei, welcome to The Conspiracy Show. How are you?
Oh, I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. And boy, what an introduction. Thank you so much. And hello to your listeners. And I'm thrilled to be able to share the rest of the inside Phoenix Light story, because as you know, there is much more to this story. You gave some great highlights there, I have to tell you, Richard, but the story is so mind-boggling. I mean, when thousands of people were looking skyward purposely for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet on March 13th, 1997, which was very clear in the northwest sky, they also caught a glimpse of Mile, and we just found out, actually. I mean, this has been going on for 21 years with the study of this sighting. It's the most documented, most witnessed, and most important. It's been hailed as the most important mass anomalous sightings in modern history, and things keep evolving, as we know. And just recently, Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, divulged that from his analysis of thousands of reports, and I'm going to be talking more about that. It wasn't just one or two events. It was many events from 3 p.m. in the afternoon till 5:30 the next morning, and for weeks before, by the way. But on March 13th, there were multiple craft, we think 10 different craft, and at least one of them was 8 miles wide, according to him. I mean, we're talking incredible, massive formations of lights. People just saw lights that seemed to be attached to something, and other people saw these actual craft. And if anyone's near a computer and wants to go to the Phoenix Lights Network website, which is packed with information and lots to explore and consider, and go to the GAP page, GAP, Geometrical Animation Project, they'll see the illustrations and animations of these 10 different craft from a 12-year study from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, as well as Arizona MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and I'm going to be presenting there actually at the end of the month for the International Symposium in Philadelphia on the 27th and 28th. We can talk about that. That's exciting. And the Village Labs, which was a clearing lab here, a computer lab, as well as Frances Barwood, Councilwoman Frances Barwood, from thousands of reports, and 2 or more people had to see the same craft. What people were describing, it was either one craft that could morph, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or an actual parade, and that's what they finally concluded, because there were multiple things happening in multiple locations at the same time, and not only in Arizona. I mean, there's so much mis and disinformation out there. That's why I finally came forward as a scientist and as an experiencer and as a physician to let people know they're not crazy, that most anomalies can be explained, but there is a small percentage that cannot. And just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency. But certainly as an educator, and you had mentioned some of my background, and for 40 years I've been doing health reporting and actually developing curriculums on vital health issues like AIDS and teen pregnancy and substance abuse prevention education that Discovery Education is distributing worldwide. So when this fell in my lap as an educator, and I am a key witness with the only 35 millimeter authenticated, analyzed and authenticated by military and university as true unknowns, it became very clear that I really had to come forward with the data. So when you combine all that, and finally coming forward in 2004 with this incredible information, it's a thrill to share it with your audience. So anyway, there was 10 craft that we do have the illustrations on the GAP page if people want to look at that, and the photos as well, the 35 millimeter photos on the photo page.
What's the latest?
To this day cannot be explained or denied.
Right. You mentioned the work of Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center, and according to his analysis, one of these craft were 8 feet across. What else have you learned?
8 miles.
8 miles. My apologies. 8 miles. 8 feet would not be particularly interesting.
8 miles across. And by the way, the technology, Richard, I mean, just the massiveness of whatever this was alone was startling. But it was totally silent. I mean, that's the other thing. And very low at rooftop level. Some people saw these craft take off at blink speed without even dispersing the air. Others saw orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it later. I mean, the technology was amazing. In fact, one of the craft, if you look at the photo at the GAP page on the Phoenix Lights Network website, one of the craft actually split in two and then shot straight up in the air. And the story as it unfolded is really amazing too, because if you take a listen to or watch our internationally award-winning documentary, you'll see that at about 3 a.m., talking about Peter Davenport, there was a call from an alleged crewman from Luke Air Force Base that reported very detailed report that one of these craft was hovering right over Central Phoenix at 7th Avenue and Indian School about 8:30 that night, and military jets were sent out to intercept it and get gun camera film, which you heard that they did. And as they approached it, the lights started to dim, and then the entire thing blinked out and disappeared. And he said he was one of the people that helped one of the pilots out of his aircraft because he was so shaken up by what happened. And there were civilians that actually saw this happen and reported later that after the military left, the craft reappeared and continued gliding very slowly towards the airport. And we have reports from air traffic control that they saw it too. In fact, I was communicating with them for 2 months because 2 months before the mass sighting, there was the exact same formation of lights that I would capture on video, one of the signature videos, handful of signature videos of that night, head on, turning in a V shape. You can see that on the photo page. And it was so unnerving because I had a very close sighting, and that's where it all began. In 95, both my husband, who's also a physician, and I had a very close sighting to our home in Paradise Valley. We live high in the mountains and have a panoramic view of the city skyline that, we were very familiar with what planes and helicopters and streetlights and car lights and so forth look like. This was right outside our bedroom window in a no-fly zone, so I can say firsthand I've seen this up close and personal. It definitely was not from here, and it was some kind of advanced technology and seemed to have an intelligence behind it. And I got 35-millimeter pictures of them 2 years before the mass sighting.
Right.
And if you look at those pictures, the same exact phenomena.
Dr. Lynne, we've got to take a time out.
2 months before and during the mass sighting are in the same location then.
All right, Dr. Lynne, we'll take a quick time out. We'll come back and continue to delve into the Phoenix Lights. And Dr. Lynne will be at the MUFON Symposium 2018 down in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, near Philadelphia, July 27th, 28th, 29th. We'll talk more about that as well. Stay with us here on The Conspiracy Show.
Curiosity, or did the devil make you do it? Whatever the reason, welcome back to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett.
Welcome back. Dr. Lynne Kitei is with us, and she'll be a featured speaker at the MUFON 2018 Symposium happening July 27th to the 29th at the Crown Plaza in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And for more information, you can go to MUFONsymposium.com, MUFONsymposium.com. I was mentioning earlier that the timing of this is very propitious. I had Dr. John Brandenburg on last week, and of course he's talking about Mars and so forth. And the 27th is the date of the lunar eclipse, the blood moon, and Mars will be the closest it's been to Earth in 15 years. So the timing couldn't be better. What are you going to be speaking about at the conference? I mean,
very
specifically.
Cool. Actually, we're offering a free presentation on Friday morning from 10 to noon. What's really interesting, and as the story unfolded, it just is very intriguing because I had no interest or knowledge in this topic at all before my husband and I saw our close sighting in 95. After thousands of people saw what I had been seeing, and actually it was a couple weeks before the mass sighting that because I had been documenting them on film for since January of 97, and actually called around and found air traffic controllers who saw the same exact thing as I was photographing them, but over Class B restricted airspace. I mean, the story is really amazing when you look at the data. I mean, they were very alarmed because it showed up not only in Class B restricted airspace, but not on radar. They didn't know what it was. Anybody that goes into that 30-mile radius, especially 1,000 feet altitude, must call into the tower, and no one did. So they took their binoculars to look, and in their own words, saw 6 points of light that seemed to be attached to something, massive span, over a mile wide, but they couldn't quite see what it was attached to. And you would hear that again. Besides craft, that's what people were also seeing 2 months later. And one of them was a meteorologist and said that the entire thing turned as a unit and then raised very, very slowly against the wind. And while I was shooting it, and then moved slowly behind South Mountain. And when I said, "So what was it?" They had no idea. they said, beats me. I said, you're air traffic controllers. You're supposed to know what's in our airspace. They ruled out every conventional possibility, besides flares and balloons and helicopters and whatever. And we kept in contact up until and including March 13th, when again, not only did I videotape the signature video of the 3 endpoints of a giant V or triangle, but I conferred with them afterwards. They saw the same exact thing in the same exact spot. But what was really interesting is that a week before, I called around. This is how close I was, Richard. A friend of a friend had a neighbor who had a friend who knew the past president of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. So I've been really connected with them from day one, and I called him up. I said, I have a picture from 95 of the closed sighting that I'd like to find out what it is and have someone of knowledge take a peek at it. And I was seeing these orbs in different formation at a distance, which other people were as well, by the way. And he refers me to a field investigator the following week for Wednesday. He calls Tuesday to postpone. The only window of opportunity I had was Friday morning. I knock on his door. He opens his door and says, did you see the mass sighting last night? And I said, well, I saw something very similar to what I had seen 2 months ago, and actually I have video. And he said, well, NBC is going to be here in a half an hour to interview him because thousands of people saw these mild to larger V formations and craft, and there was a mass sighting last night. That was the first I had heard of it, and I said, whoa, I'm out of here, because I had done health reporting for NBC, not only in Philadelphia, which is another little coincidence with Jessica Savage and Mort Krim in the 70s, but I also worked in Phoenix doing health reporting at NBC, and I said, I'm out of here. It's not about me. It's about the data. Take a copy of the video, share it with whoever, so people can see what we saw. And I left, and by that afternoon, the following day, March 14th, my video was on every news channel. And to answer your question, from that day on, I started documenting everything that I could to find out a logical explanation, which I still do not have 21 years later. But what I do have, not only the only 35 millimeter photographs of these anomalous aerial phenomena, but I have amazing video from reports, TV reports, where my video appeared. And what I'll be sharing on Friday morning from 10 to 12 on the 27th is how the story unfolded through the media. It is just fascinating. And then on Saturday morning, I will be talking about the theme of the whole conference is the future of humanity. And as you mentioned at the top, just recently, because I've been working on a curriculum, that's my passion, is youth education of vital health issues, but now I'm really honing in on youth education of this vital issue, and I produced a book, actually a graphic novel, activities coloring book for all ages called The Phoenix Lights, UFOs and Crop Circles, coloring book, Adventures of Sue, F.O., Field Observer, and Hugh, H-U-G-H, Hugh, F.O., and he's a little alien, and I worked with a Disney illustrator and a map maker who is unbelievable, who actually came out and measured how big these craft were and the exact locations, and we have 80 crop circles and activities. It's really cool. So on Saturday morning, I'm going to be talking about how the Phoenix Lights has inspired future generations, because I include kids and I go to schools, and certainly we have now that we have the documentary that's won over a dozen International Film Festival Awards, we present that every year at the Scottsdale Harkin Shea Theater, and there's always a dozen or more kids that are there, and many doing book reports on the book. And now we have this new graphic novel, which is really fun, and more, and how it's really impacting young people because they thirst for this knowledge, and there is nothing in our history books. So I'm trying to change that, doing what we can to get the information out in a credible and professional way. And then we'll be doing a panel right after that at noon at the conference with some of the wonderful people that will be speaking there. And then at actually 12:15, they're also showing the documentary, which is free to the public, and I invite everyone that's nearby to please come and watch the documentary, and I'll be doing a Q&A after that till about 2:30. So it's going to be a full day, and we're getting a lot of the Phoenix Lights information out there, which is really exciting and important, because it speaks for itself, and it's really interesting how the story unfolded. If we have time to talk about that.
Well, of the 10,000 witnesses, what do they? Those that you've been in contact with, what do they tell you about the long-term effect of this sighting on them?
That's really a great question, Richard, because besides the story itself, because there was no investigation, no explanation, and here it really impacted people in real time and long term, which I'll share in a second. There was nothing until months later, when a front page USA Today article opened our sighting to international scrutiny. We were deluged by media from all over the world. We didn't have social media then, and the very next day, and you alluded to that at the beginning, the former governor Symington actually called an unscheduled press conference for that afternoon to divulge the culprit of the lights over Phoenix, and he comes marching out, one of his aides in a giant alien head costume, we'll talk about that, and made a mockery of it, which was really disconcerting, especially parents that were with children that saw this thing that was like 2 giant shopping centers wide, and kind of put a lid on it. And a month later, and I really tried to investigate, Richard, and called every military base, and they were more interested in what I had, and they had no clue what it was. And yet I get a call a month later, this is July 24th, from one of the heads of the PR at the National Guard. And she said, "Oh, Dr. Lynn, I think we know what those lights were back in March." And I was thrilled. I wanted any logical explanation. She said, "Do you believe that nobody ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard, and the Maryland Air National Guard was sending off flares in Operation Snowbird," which I later found out meant diversionary tactical maneuvers, and that must be what some people saw. And I said, "Well, when was the Maryland Air National Guard in town?" She said, March 1st to the 15th. I said, "Well, were they in town in January?" She said, "Oh, no." I said, "Are you sure?" She says, "Absolutely not." I said, "Well, I have 35-millimeter photographs of the same exact phenomena in the same exact location as March 13th, confirmed both times by air traffic controllers as being in Class B restricted airspace, over Class B restricted airspace." And she says, "You never told me that." And I said, "Besides, you're telling me that flares that cannot keep information, that drift and drop with the wind, have huge smoke trails, and cannot keep information, traverse the entire state and beyond." And by the way, that was also seen in Nevada and California and New Mexico. And she says, "I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you." Well, I'm still waiting. Yeah. And what was really interesting, Richard, and I'll get back to how it affected people, but I wanted to let your audience know how the story unfolded, because it wasn't until 3 years later, because the flare thing was really, a logical explanation that people could feed into, and I get it. Most people want a logical explanation, but it did not sit well with the witnesses, nor did it sit well with Councilwoman Frances Barwood, who was the only elected official that innocently asked for an investigation in May. And this is I bring this up because this is how it affected people. Not only I'll talk about real time and long term as far as the craft themselves, but the ridicule and the snickering. She got plastered when she even just innocently asked for an investigation. 3 years later, she was running for Secretary of State on a platform to get answers for the Phoenix Lights, and suddenly we hear the 3 Air National Guards were coming into town to send off flares to show everybody the Phoenix Lights. And if you go to the news page on the Phoenix Lights Network website and just scroll down a little bit to Arizona, the AZ family, that's a CNN affiliate block there, you'll see exactly what it looked like. It was a joke. I mean, this was their shot, and they blew it. They tried to make a triangle. It broke away immediately, had huge smoke trails, and by the way, not one witness to the true unknown saw any of those characteristics. So that kind of put a lid on it, and the craft have never been explained. And to go to your answer, it was really scary to come forward, by the way. That's why I stayed anonymous for 7 years and ended up with a 750-page journal 7 years later. But in real time, and it's really curious, in real time, we're so inundated with threat, and harm in the media and Hollywood and so forth, that Dr. Gary Schwartz, who's a professor at the University of Arizona, and in our documentary makes a very poignant statement that if you're so ingrained with the threat scenario, how do you think you're going to feel when you see something really massive and unusual? Well, interestingly, children were the first ones to usually alert their parents that this massive V formation of lights was coming towards them, jumping up and down, Independence Day, Independence Day. But as it got close, a calmness came over everyone, adults and children alike, a connectiveness to the phenomena that after it passed, they wanted to run after it, get in the car. I mean, it's amazing when you really look at the data, and people tell me over and over again, there is not one report in 21 years of harm, threat, or abduction associated with the Phoenix Lights mass sighting. And not only that, but long-term, that's another thing. I'm still hearing from people, especially lately, pilots and military that saw this. It changed people forever. They were awakened. People ask me all the time, who did this? I don't know who did this. I don't know what they were, but I know that they were. And that it really affected people at a very deep level. Some people went into the peace movement, the environmental movement, changed their eating habits. It's amazing when you really look at the data how the Phoenix Lights affected people at a very, very deep soul level. And, when you look at the reality of it, balloons and flares and helicopters don't do that.
And we're coming up to a break here. I'll ask you now when we can continue the conversation a little bit after the break. But do you ever think about, what would happen if the Phoenix Lights, this mass sighting, were to happen today with all of the phone cameras and so forth? It would be a very different story, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're actually, interestingly, the Internet was just getting started. Mm-hmm. And, at the time, people ask all the time, why weren't there more pictures? I feel very fortunate that I happened to catch 35 millimeter, the only 35 millimeter. They're in the negative. They cannot be denied or explained. And today, with digital, it can be manipulated. So one wonders, did they know, whoever did this, that, at the time that, certainly it would be very different today if people had their phones out and could really, document everything. I'm a documentation person, and also with social media. I mean, we've come such a long way. In fact, the Phoenix Lights was the first mass sighting that was actually addressed in chat rooms at the time on the Internet, and we've come such a long way. It would be really, really cool if something like that happened today and people were out and about like they were on March 13th, 1997, looking up at the sky purposely for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet if they had their cell phones with them, and we could really document something like this. So hopefully that will happen someday soon.
No doubt. All right, Dr. Lynne, stay put. We'll come back and continue to discuss the Phoenix Lights 21 years later. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Syrett. Stay with us.
If you're sure your phone isn't tapped, call now. 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Dr. Lynne Kitei, you broke your silence. You came forward years later, but I guess it's been about a year since Kurt Russell, I mentioned him earlier, he came forward and broke a 20-year silence. Have you ever spoken to Kurt Russell, or has he reached out to you?
Oh, I would love to. But I have to tell you, interestingly, and I do not believe in coincidence anymore, Richard, when I called the air traffic controllers the morning after the mass sighting to see if they saw the same thing I saw, because it seemed to be in the same location, which it was, about 1,000 feet altitude over Class B restricted airspace. One of them shared with me that a private pilot had called into the tower to report the lights right in front of them on approach to Sky Harbor. And I even mentioned that in my book, which was published in 2004. And then, interestingly, when his new Galaxy movie was coming out, he was asked by a reporter, he mentioned that the Phoenix Lights had happened and that there was a private pilot. And he finally divulged that he was actually that pilot. He had come home one evening 2 years after. He was on approach to Sky Harbor, about 5 miles out, he said, with his son. They have a home here in Carefree. And his son actually saw 6 lights, just like I photographed, right in front of him. And, they were startled, and he called to report them. And he said that he actually looked back at his log, to see what he had written down. And of all things, it was him. I mean, he had walked in the door 2 years later. And this is very interesting, Richard, because you asked how it affected people. Some people actually forgot all about it. It was just, it happened. They saw it. In fact, in the book, there is a long oration a report that was sent to MUFON from a mutual UFO network by a psychiatrist down in Tucson. He was coming up I-10, which is the main highway from Tucson to Phoenix, about 2 hours south of Phoenix, with his family, his wife and daughter and her friend, to a swim meet. And one of these craft was right above their car. And he said the wingspan was so massive that not only did it cover both sides of the highway, but went way out into the fields on both sides. And he got a chance to look at it. His wife was driving right above him. He watched it for a while, and he saw these giant, and a pilot would also call these giant lights like a well. The light did not extend outside of the circle like a canister in the ceiling. And they forgot about it for months until they saw something on TV, and then the thoughts and the experience just flooded back, and it happened to quite a number of people, including Kurt Russell. He said that he just forgot about it for 2 years. He walks in, Goldie Hawn, who is his partner, was watching a show on TV, and they were talking about the Phoenix Lights. And he said it was the kind of thing like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters, right, when he just all of a sudden realized, wait a minute, I recognize that. There's something about it that is very familiar to me.
Right.
And then suddenly it hit him that he was that private pilot that came into Sky Harbor and saw it. And was very excited. He looked at his log, and there it was, right in his log.
That's an interesting phenomenon, because
it's great when celebrities, and by the way, Alice Cooper also came to one of the showings, and he came up to me, he said, I saw it too. So there's a lot of people out there that saw it, and as you alluded to too, also after 10 years, right after the 10th anniversary, our former Governor Symington, for whatever reason, decided that he was going to share that he actually saw one of the craft, and as an awarded military pilot, it was definitely not flares, but what he described, it was otherworldly.
Right. This idea of seeing something like this, so dramatic, and then sort of forgetting about it, or maybe suppressing it, or whatever happens. I mean, I've heard this again and again. A friend of mine had a sighting. He was traveling in a car in Iran, and his father and stepmother were in the car with him, and they both saw this enormous craft come out of the sky, and it seemed to be swallowed up by the earth, by the desert. It came and went underground. They both watched this, and then he said after it happened, it was like nothing happened. They just continued along on their journey driving, and no one said a word, and they never spoke of it again. What is that?
Yeah, certainly many people pulled over their cars and saw it so close up and personal that they did remember what happened. But there are people that, for whatever reason, it just is buried until something awakens it again. And then when it does, it's like a floodgate opens up, and they realize that, oh, my goodness, I mean, I really experienced this thing. I mean, everybody comes from a different background, from a different upbringing, from a different worldview. Some people can't deal with this topic, and some people don't want to. And that's okay. Everyone in their own time. But that was one of the reasons I came forward, Richard, because as a physician alone and as an experiencer, I certainly knew firsthand, up close and personal, that when something paranormal happens to you, it is earth-shaking, it is mind-boggling, and as you say, some people just bury it, and other people can't deal with it, and it's very cathartic to share. It's healing to share. And, that was one of the reasons I came forward to say, hey, it's enough. I mean, it's enough with the snickering and the ridicule and the discrediting. It's time we get this topic out in the open, and we address it, we accept it, and we study it so we can find out not only who's driving these things, but also move forward in our own evolution. And the more we talk about it, and the more we can really talk about it openly and honestly and get it out there, which is one of the reasons I came forward. Just get the data out there. Let people decide for themselves. It is a positive transformation, not only in real time, as we talked about for the witnesses, in just real time. It changed their whole perception of the fact that we're not alone, that there's something more in the universe.
We'll take a quick time out. Dr. Lynne stays with us. The Phoenix Lights, here on The Conspiracy Show.
You want the truth? You can handle the truth. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett.
Welcome back. Dr. Lynne Kitei, Phoenix Lights, is with us. You had a quick story that we didn't get to just before the break. We were talking about how people sort of forget about the paranormal experiences like this, and then all of a sudden something triggers. There's a triggering event maybe, and then it all comes flooding out. You had another story related to that, I believe.
If you'd be kind enough to put the correct link on my Facebook page, people will please visit the Phoenix Lights Network website and Facebook page for the latest updates. I know that there are people that are listening to the show right now, and I really appreciate that. And it's important to not only share the hard data, but what's really interesting, and you asked me about the personal effects of this. There were a number, and this is another little aside that is so profound. I mean, not only did I find out that there is a very, very strong Native American connection, if we have time, I'd love to get into that, to the Phoenix Lights, but as far as the witnesses, when I was interviewing, quite a few of them had shared with me that they had had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting, which I found really poignant because I did too. And it was like, whoa. I mean, I lay it all out in the book, so people are I welcome people to take a look at it, because that alone is a kind of a groundwork for what has happened now. But what was really amazing to me is I thought, geez, could there possibly be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether it's near-death experience, out-of-body experience, or unexplained aerial phenomena experience that has a mystical light associated with the experience? And lo and behold, again, when I started looking, I really did my homework to find out the history, which is a vast history. You don't have time to get into it today, but I do in the book and touch on it in the documentary. But what really got me is that there were studies at university, the Omega Project by Dr. Kenneth Ring, like a 5-inch book, as well as Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia, and even Dr. John Mack at Harvard University were all coming to the conclusion that there was indeed a connection between all unexplained phenomena. I laid it out very simply in the book. Not only is the experience, whatever the experience is, whatever the unexplained phenomena experience is, very similar, but the after effect is so profound. The awakening, the positive transformation, the connectedness that one feels to the universe and to the earth and to each other that may never have felt that before is so powerful. It's life-changing. And I started calling all unexplained phenomena an up, a UP, an up, because it is an up. It really changes you forever. And over and over, and I've received thousands of emails. Again, I offer people, I had mentioned that it's very cathartic and healing when you share, even just with one person. And if you go to the website, the Phoenix Lights Network website, there's a contact link on top, and I love hearing from people. We even have a sharing page on the website, and I'm hearing more and more from pilots and military now that are retired that are coming forward, and as well as the Phoenix Lights Network website, Facebook page. Please message me. I love to hear from people, and it's very, very healing when people share. So that's another aspect that it really has touched people, not only at a profound level, but that I did find a connection between all unexplained phenomena that is very profound and poignant and important.
Of the 10,000 again, are you hearing stories about strange synchronicities or coincidences in their lives as a result of the sighting?
I love that you brought that up, Richard, because most of my book talks about that. I mean, I'm a healthy skeptic. My book is The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. When you're a physician, you must be open to any possibilities. But I have to see it to believe it, and I have. It's not a believing anymore. It's a knowing. And, I have to say that, it's, to really get into this. I mean, it's amazing how. I mean, what was your question as far as that goes?
Well, just the coincidences being or synchronicities.
Well, as far as the coincidence, I don't believe in coincidence anymore. And here's the example. I'm glad you brought that up because 6 months before, this is just one of many. As the story unfolded, there were just the puzzle pieces just kept fitting together. 6 months before the mass sighting, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program at the Gila Bend Indian Reservation, which is in the basin. If you look at the photo page, there's a picture of the topography. Right south of the airport is South Mountain, and a few miles back are the Estrella Mountain ranges. And there's a basin in between where the Gila Bend Indian Reservation, very sacred ground, is located. And they actually intersect at one point. The South Mountains on the left and the Estrellas are on the right. And I went to their one school, and I presented, and I helped them out. They don't really talk to outsiders. And I noticed after the mass sighting that my pictures seemed to indicate, and it's right there in the 35 millimeter negatives, that these phenomena kept popping up right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. And so I called them up and I said, did anybody happen to see strange lights on March 13th? And they started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And they said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. It's part of their culture. I had no idea, Richard. That was the first I had heard about it when I really looked into this. I found that indigenous cultures worldwide have been very open to these phenomena and the reality that there are other beings out there and even visiting us. And in fact, the Hopi right here in Arizona have protocols to invite these phenomena in. Some believe that they're spirit world coming, their ancestors coming to give them comfort and guidance and knowledge and inspiration. And I certainly have been inspired, I have to tell you. But they also mentioned that the Estrella Mountains got its name because of the lore and because even the Spaniards of the day might have seen these phenomena, star in Spanish. And they also believe that there is a portal or gateway in that area. And again, if you go to the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website and take a peek at the data, the unique collection of these anomalous aerial phenomena that have been analyzed and authenticated as true unknowns, they keep popping up in that area, the same spot. So, maybe that's true. But certainly, the bottom line is that once you wake up to the fact that we're not alone and that there are other possibilities out there, and let's be real. I mean, now we know from the Hubble and the Kepler telescopes that there are trillions of other galaxies out there, much older than ours. In fact, our solar system is a very young solar system. It's only 4 to 6 billion years old, and there are scientists out there that are postulating that there could be intelligent, sentient beings out there, billions of years ahead of us, and the ingredients of life are out there. We know that oxygen and nitrogen and organic materials and carbon and so forth are out there, and we're made of stardust. So, the reality is, the very real reality is that we are probably not alone.
Of the 10,000, did anyone report any other strange phenomena like missing time?
Well, that's another really good question, Richard, because the pictures that I took in 95, to my husband and I, it was only a couple minutes, 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. The year after the mass sighting, there was another interesting sighting that I alerted the other people that had taken video on the night of March 13th that I was seeing these lights again for the first time, a year after the mass sighting, and just had a feeling they might come back. And we were all ready with our cameras and actually got, and the footage, by the way, is in the documentary, a 40-mile wide, 20-minute array of straight lines and mirror images. And the final thing is a giant triangle. That seems to be a huge scenario in these phenomena, like a pyramid, like what my husband and I saw right outside our bedroom window. And I thought, geez, I had been told, and I really stayed anonymous, by the way, for 7 years, but I had met a few people, including Linda Moulton Howell, who had recommended that I get in touch with Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee about my data. And I really hesitated, but at that point I thought, you know what, I had alerted the other people, and interestingly, serendipitously, the people that took video on the night of March 13th, and there's only a handful, were north, south, east, and west. So again, we got this 40-minute array, 20-minute array, 40 miles wide, and I thought, geez, I'm going to send footage to Dr. Maccabee, and as an afterthought, I put the first and the last picture from the 95 close sighting in the package. He calls me a couple weeks later. He says, by the way, how long was that sighting in 95? I said, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. He said, confer with your husband. And interestingly, my husband was inside. I was outside on the balcony taking the pictures, and he would never talk about it. And I said, he's not going to talk about it. He said, well, you've got to confer, which I ended up doing. I said, just tell me how long you think it was. And he confirmed to him it was also just a few minutes. He said, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? And for anybody that's out there that's by their computers, that can go on the photo page at the Phoenix Lights Network website, it is a visual. He says, first of all, and he was the first one to notice, that the same exact line of lights, the phenomena at a distance that was over Class B restricted airspace that I would capture 2 months before the mass sighting and during the mass sighting, was in the same spot there in 95. And as I mentioned earlier, some people saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it. Maybe that's what happened. But at any rate, as he says to me, please confer with your husband. I did. I went back to Dr. Maccabee. He says, not only is the same phenomena in the background, he says, but look at the skyline. And I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, there are many lights, groups of lights on in the first picture that are off, groups in the last picture. He said, that doesn't happen in a couple of minutes. I'd like you to do an experiment. And by the way, he wrote up a 21-page report that's on our website, and I talk about it in the book as well. I go out on the balcony one night every hour, the next night every half hour. I also did every 15 minutes, sent him the pictures. He did such a meticulous analysis to see when the lights started going out. Now, I usually take a bath between 7 and 8.
We're just about out of time, We're just about out of time, Dr. Lynn. The upshot of this is... Well,
the upshot is that he actually presented it at the 1999 MUFON International Symposium as the first, if not the only, photographic evidence, authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. There's a lot more to this story that I hope people will check out the book, The Phoenix Lights Skeptic's Discovery, that we are not alone to read about, and also I'll be sharing it in my lectures next week, at the MUFON International Symposium in Cherry Hill, Philadelphia, on the 27th and 28th of July.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lynn. We'll talk again.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Keep looking up.
All right, Dr. Lynn Kitei, MUFON2018 My thanks to Ian, Albert, Ryan, and Young North, the apprentice, on the board. Back next week with a brand new program. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There's nothing concealed that won't be revealed and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper. Proclaim from the housetops. Move over, Aphrodite. I'm coming home. Good night.